This is Dianne Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Welcome to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. And I'm your host, Dianne Andrews. Thank you for tuning in to us today out in those 3 million homes, whether you're in New Orleans, Shreveport, or over in Mississippi. We thank you for viewing us. We have a very interesting show for you today, and it is based on a show we did last week on race, religion, politics, immigration with Generation Y and Z. And we're here to talk about what their thought patterns are and how it may help you with your children or help you with your own thought process out there. With people of Generation Y and Z, which goes up to age 36. We have a person here as young as 15, about to be 16, and going up to 36 years old. And we are going to talk about the experiences that they're having in life, what is their biggest problems in life today, and what things they've gone through that have made them better, or they think that they need help in becoming better because of. So we're going to start with that today, and then I'm going to ask them questions about what do they think about immigration. Will they give Donald Trump a chance to become a good president, which I think he probably can be. Things like that, race relations, politics. What happened at Ohio State University a couple of weeks with the Somalian-born person who ended up butchering 12 other students. So today I have 4 guests with me. To my left is Dr. Charles Malvo. He's an ex-policeman. He's been in the military, or about to be in the military, I guess, Reserve, U.S. Coast Guard, UN, right? Air Force Reserve.
Coast Guard.
And Coast Guard. And he's also a drone pilot and a regular pilot, but he recently received his PhD in engineering from Louisiana State University. Next to Charles, I have Linda Allred. Linda does the hottest ticket in town, and that's quite a mouthful right there. She is an expert with over 20 years, I think, in mastering of the mind, or the mindset, right, Linda?
Right.
She recently, in 2014, won a Quilly Award in Hollywood, California, for her work as an author and her books that she's written.
Right.
So congratulations on that, Linda. Next to her, I have an old friend who's been on here many times, Preston Castile, attorney Preston Castile, who's a former judge. But what he's here representing, and what he represents mostly, is Southern University. He's the national president of the Southern University Alumni. And thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me, Diane.
And next to him, a person that I recently met, Charles Hedrick. Is it Herrick? Herrick. You started the sales team at LSU, I think, right?
That is correct, yes.
And you're the founder, and do they still have the sales team there?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, but you're not, are you still associated?
I stepped down in May.
Yeah, I know you were former. It said founder and former, so I didn't know if they didn't have it anymore, you didn't participate anymore. You're the in New Orleans, you're the National Speakers Association chapter president down in New Orleans for the NSA, which I'm going to be coming down to join you all, and I appreciate you inviting me for that. But what you really do, you're the president, you're the owner of the Baton Rouge Sandler Training.
That's correct.
Do you call it company or?
It's a franchise structure. We're in 30 countries, and I own the franchise for Louisiana.
So you've done a plethora of things. As you're coming to us from the Northeast, I think we talked about originally. So I'm sorry it's cold in the studio today, but you're accustomed to it. So let's start off talking about some of the things that we're going to talk about: race. We're going to talk about religion. We're going to talk about the acceptance or non-acceptance of Donald Trump as our new president-elect of the United States of America. And we're going to talk about immigration, about heroin, some of the things that we heard the youth talk about last week. One thing that really stood out to me is them looking for mentors, people who can help pull them up. Who would like to start the conversation on how we think we can better associate with the youth, the Generation Y and Z, and helping to pull them up, and what can we do to help them? Because this is going to be a series. They asked me if I would do it again. And maybe have 8-10 people out. What I'll probably do for the next one is have that show be an hour. It'd be 2 shows. We'll combine it into one show.
I'd like to start off. I believe in mentorship. I had my first mentor when I started my company, Baton Rouge Hypnosis. And I believe that if you want to do something and you have a goal, then find someone that's already done it that can teach you how to do it and get you there faster and not make all the mistakes.
Yeah, a lot faster.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every year I pick a new mentor, and that's who I co-authored my book with. Was Lisa Sasevich, was a mentor of mine.
Now, who do you mentor? How do you help others to pull them up, Linda?
Well, I mentor them by teaching them mindset mastery, and you can do anything that you believe you can. Henry Ford said, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. And so it's all about mastering this little guy who I call my little Tasmanian devil. He used to be my little inner critic, but now I've trained him to be my best friend. And every morning he tells me in the bathroom, what do we want to do today, Linda? Because we know by understanding how to master the subconscious and conscious mind, we can do anything that we want.
And I have to say, Linda recently was one of the flood victims. I did several shows. I did one with Livingston Parish Mayor, with Mayor Ramsey from Walker over there in Livingston Parish on the flood. And Linda lost everything, I think, in your home that you had just redecorated.
I just redecorated. My neighbor pulled me out into 4.5 feet of water. I thought I was going to drown. I really did. I got off the blow-up mattress. I've been in a condo now for 4 nights. I have a mattress. It's wonderful.
So I'm therapeutic. You say you just got one. You can go up and down and sideways and vibrate and everything on those therapeutic. Right. Those are nice.
But there's more right in my life than wrong. That's what you have to focus on.
That's right. That's right. Just get up and get it done.
That's right.
Just do it, like Nike says. Okay, Preston.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is with young people. And I had an opportunity to listen to your show last week, and that is they're looking for mentors. And in my own family, I think about my children. My son, who's the oldest, is 21, but my youngest is 6 years old. And when I look at my daughter and the fact that she looks at people, adults, and she is patterning her behavior off of what she sees. So if I say something, or if I breathe a certain way, if I sigh, if I show certain emotions, she will want to mimic that behavior. That's how she is learning to be a young person and will grow to be a young adult. And frankly, we don't change a whole lot as we grow up. So the young people that you interviewed on your last show, they're looking for those good role models because they're trying to figure out how to be adults and contribute to society in the right way. And the better role models that we have, the good mentors that those young people have, the better we will get in terms of results. And so we've all collectively as adults have a responsibility, whether it's our own children or the children in the community. When they have those good role models, then they end up being good, productive citizens. But when something happens and we deviate from that, either with some deviant behavior or some bad behavior or negative behavior, the outcome is a lot of what we see as the ills of our society now. So that mentorship, that having the right mindset is so important for our young people to see.
How do you think we get to them? Because at 4 and 5 years old, 80% of your behavior patterns are formed. So what do we do?
Well, I think a lot of it is formed, but as a bioenvironmental engineer, we have to look at people as a system. It's not just nature, it's also nurture. So given time, with the right environment, we can overcome things. We can overcome difficulties. Any type of problem that people in the population may have, children have, they're looking for leaders. If we can lead by example and do the right things, even though at 4 or 5, 80% of their personality may be formed, even if they come from a broken home. If they can see the right examples in the world around them, then they have a chance at doing well.
But how do we do that, Carl, with the Facebooks, the Twitters? We talked about, babies having babies. When they see celebrities, all these celebrities adopting babies, some single, some married, and some having babies. It used to be that it was bad. People did not want to be pregnant and have a baby. Now they say, I want love.
Stigma attached
yeah, it's
to
not
it.
a stigma anymore. What do we do about that with the role models they see on their Facebook as celebrities out here, too?
Well, I loved what Preston was saying in regards to that his daughter sees things. So the phrase that I was taught years ago is, it's what's caught more than what's taught by our children. And I do have 4 children, ages 30 to 19, and mom and dad always were concerned about what lessons are they picking up by what we do. I think it was St. Francis who said, preach the gospel daily, when necessary, use words. I watched TV shows, as corny as that may sound. I grew up watching The Rifleman and Bonanza and Father Knows Best. And there were literally ways to act that were seen as acceptable and thoughtful and gracious and good manners, and it stuck. And so I wanted to emulate that, as well as I had, we were poor. My father had 8 grades of education, and he was a laborer, but he certainly modeled generosity and unconditional love and kindness. So my focus is always on how do we create those environments in a way that, you know, is not as expensive as the things that we do now, so that kids don't get broke. As easy as it, I say easy, as important as it is and possible to change them once they're broken, it usually is very expensive and it doesn't always work. I did a talk for the Rotary years ago where I brought in 2x4s to, like you'd build a house with. And one of them was perfectly straight and the other was very crooked. And I asked the people in the audience, business people, I said, if you were building a building and you had 2 truckloads of 2x4s, which group would you want, the straight ones or the crooked ones? And I said to them, well, they actually both came from the same tree. They started perfectly straight, but this one was left out in the rain. It was run over a couple of times. Why do we do that? Too many kids are damaged in that way because the wiring does take place in the first 6 years, and then it's so expensive and so difficult to rewire. And Linda, you're an expert on the subject.
I can tell you a story about a little boy named Dino, 10 years old. In fact, it's Albert Pelche's son, and Albert's in NSA. He said, I love him, but the glass is always half empty. He said, well, you work with him. Negativity. I said, let him listen to my child's health and confidence. It's positive affirmations under 10 years, made for under 11. 2 weeks later, they noticed that Dino was waking up happier, and they said it couldn't be that CD. 3 weeks later, Dino's teacher called and said, what are you doing? His grades are better, he's not acting out, and he's got more confidence. He says, how do you say it? I'm self-confident. I have self-confidence.
How old is he?
He was 10 years old, you know. And the teacher said he'd never said anything like that. So Albert, you know, it was all just putting new positive messages into the mind.
It's amazing when you say that, because my son, who's now 21, but growing up, I would tell him about how you project on the world, they reflect that back. And I gave him an example. I said, look, if you walk up to people and you smile and you're friendly, they're going to respond back in kind. You can almost walk up to any person, and if you smile at them, they'll generally smile right back. And he said, no way, Dad, they won't do that. We're in a grocery store, and I said, watch. And I walked up to someone, and I just smiled. And the person, stranger, didn't know them, just smiled back. I walk up to another person, just smiled, and they just smiled back.
So
he said, that's amazing. He said, wow, that really works. And it's he now will do that. He is conscious of the fact that not only is it his own attitude that will impact him, but it will impact others. That's true with being a mentor, with impacting young people's lives at all ages.
Now, Preston, we did a show a year or so ago on Dr. Martin Luther King, and we talked about at that time, I think Eric Garner had been killed. By police. I won't say murdered, but killed by police with a chokehold. But on that show, we started talking about people being stopped by police, the youth, young blacks especially. And we talked about how they relate to that police officer, the lack of respect. And you were saying you teach your children all the time to respect, right or wrong, fight it another day. He has a gun, right? I wanted to talk to you all about that. What do you think? Because so many young black boys, 65% of our youth in the black community don't have a father to teach them that, right? What can we do to help impact that in Hispanic, some, and the fastest growing part of unwed mothers is the white girl. It's now, I think 15, 20 years ago it was 10, 15%, and now it's up to 30, 35%. So we're coming into a society of matriarchs with no fathers in the home. What do you all think? How do we go out and try to impact that in the world as mentors? What do we do?
Well, there's no magic bullet. We can't magically go and make a perfect society. People are going to be broken. The fact of the matter is that the average income in this state is below $50,000 a year. With that said, they're not exactly going to have the best opportunities growing up. And so there are going to be problems. The parents are under stress. If a family has 4 children and they make $40,000 a year, you're talking $10,000 per head in that household, and that's a big stretch. And then bills come in. Of course, maybe the father gets pulled over for speeding, he gets a $250 ticket, he doesn't make it to court, then it's a $500 fine and the car is towed. The record fee is $200 per day. The car is gone, they've got no car, the father's aggravated, maybe he takes it out on the kids, or maybe he just doesn't show up back home. And then all of a sudden you have a broken home and you have a child with no father. The mother turns to the welfare system and perhaps she gets money that way. But either way it goes, the child knows that their home is broken. And so their interaction with police is always going to be questionable because poverty and the work that the police are doing, it's always going to be a high crime area.
Do you think it would be better if we had community policing? I've done several shows on that. I don't think we do that too much anymore.
I think community policing could go a long way because we want to have a relationship between the police and the children that's positive. Because at the end of the day, the father's not in the home. The police themselves become the role model that the children see. And if that role model is something that they don't like or something they don't aspire to, or they see violence in that role model, like what they're seeing in popular media today, that could be a problem.
I did a show, Race, Religion, and Politics, with Abdullah Mahufly, the Triple S owner, where Alton Sterling was shot and killed. And one of the people on that panel was from Centercore. He was a white guy, and he talked about, he grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and he had done some bad things, you know, as a kid, but because the police knew him and they had community policing in there, and he would tell him, hey, you know better than doing that, Dave, and he let him go. And he learned a lesson to never do that again.
Diane, I had the same thing happen to me. I just come back after traveling around the world as an engineer on a ship, and I'm in my little sports car and I'm driving a little too fast in my little town.
Yeah.
And an officer by the name of Johnson pulled me over. Now, I was 104 kids in my graduating class, so it was a small town.
Right.
And he looked at my license and he said, "Are you Earl Herrick's son?" My dad worked for the water department in the town.
Yeah.
And he let me go because he knew my dad. He knew my dad was a good guy, so I probably wasn't the worst guy.
Right.
But I learned my lesson, and I never did that again.
So isn't it all about relationships? And at this time,
Or
we
the
don't have
ab-
relationships with policemen.
Or the
right?
absence of relationships.
Right,
So what we
right.
talked about on that show is that if you have an encounter with the police officer, whether you're black, brown, white, or whatever, that it's so important that you don't know that person. Perhaps the role is reversed, doctor, and that is maybe the police officer has experienced some of these issues financially, and you don't know what's going on, but what you do know is that police officer has a gun, he's in a position of control and authority. If you are being stopped, I don't care what you look like, that you need to fight the fight another day, if at all possible, and not do anything to contribute to the conflict. So for black fathers, all too often what we end up having to do is say to our sons in particular, but also our daughters, we give them the talk, and that is that if you are ever stopped by law enforcement, that you comply and you live to fight another day, because you don't want to be the subject of some show like this one saying what went wrong, and you want to do as much as you can. Things happen, there's no doubt about that, but you always want to look at it from the other person's perspective, either way, because that person might be having a bad day and you don't want to be the victim of someone's bad day.
What do you all think of Donald Trump? We're going to change the subject as President-elect Donald Trump. During the some of the debates, and you know, Donald Trump was asked, would he accept the results of the election? And it does not seem to be that Democrats are accepting very graciously the results of the election. It doesn't seem to be. With the recount, now the Russian hacking, and I guess there is hacking. But I think they recounted in Michigan and Wisconsin and found not very many votes, 74 maybe, and one state went more for Trump, and it was in the double, you know.
131 votes?
Yeah, not many votes at all.
And it's at millions of dollars of expense to the taxpayers.
Right. And what's her name? The Green Party, Dr. Jill Stein was part of the leader on this, and I guess she was, I don't know what she was trying to get because she was nowhere near. I guess justice is what she wanted with the recounts. I don't know. But so what do you all think of the country and what's going on with President-elect Donald Trump, the acceptance, not acceptance, how he ran his campaign, and how do you think he's doing so far with his cabinet selections?
Well, I liked what you said. Like you sponsor your own show.
Right.
You pay for it.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump sponsored his own,
Right.
you know, so.
Well, you can't buy me if I'm paying.
That's
People,
right.
I do what I want to do on this show, right? Because I pay it. Nobody, no network who's paying my salary or paying me to do the show can tell me, Dianne, you can't do this, right? Because I have my own studio and I pay the show. That makes a difference when you put your own money in. It's much different when you do your own money than other people's money, right? OPM.
Yes.
Yeah.
This has been one of the most fascinating elections in history because irrespective of what you think about the candidates, the fact that this process unfolded the way it did, the fact that Donald Trump was able to go around mainstream media, to not have to raise as much money because he found a new medium to campaign. Barack Obama did it. He did it Twitter.
With social media.
8 years ago, Barack Obama
Well, for
found a new
270
medium.
days, Hillary Clinton wasn't seen. She gave him the opportunity. That's almost a year.
It tells you to continue to evolve with society, whether you're in politics or whether you're in business
Because she
or anything
spent
else.
double the amount of money on the campaign.
Yeah.
And still.
I really thought that was fascinating about Donald Trump, his use of technology.
Yeah.
And the fact that you just interviewed a panel of youth last week. But when you look at Donald Trump, he's 70 years old, but I heard somebody comment about him that he uses the internet like a 25-year-old. He has no problem using technology.
Right.
He's an
He's up
entrepreneur.
at 3 a.m. on the internet. He drinks and smokes nothing,
Very
right?
alert. He doesn't
anything.
drink. He doesn't smoke.
Yeah.
He's never used drugs,
Right.
according to his own word, and I believe him. And it just
Brother
seems
died of
that,
alcoholism.
and his brother did die of
Died of
alcoholism.
alcoholism.
So that was another example where something in his environment
Right.
may have influenced his behavior,
That's
just like we were
right.
talking about with the kids.
Right.
So I do think that this has been a fascinating election. It's been interesting to see, and it's interesting to see somebody in that seat of power that can't be bought.
Right. What do y'all think of race? We only have about 5 more minutes, and I want to go through a few other. What do you think how the race relations seem to be in America today versus 20 years ago? What do you think?
Well-
Dr. Malvo?
Me, I think race is an illusion. As a bioengineer, I look at people as biosystems. If you really look at this country, you know.
It's biosystems?
Biosystems, just
Okay.
people, right?
Yeah,
just
yeah.
people. Let's think about
I
it.
never heard it
We're
said
just,
like that, people are
We're a
biosystems.
group of
I'm going to go home and
genes.
introduce myself to my biosystems.
Well, think about it this way. What I mean is we're a group of genes. We're put together. We've lived in this country for hundreds of years. My family goes back to the 1780s. We have white ancestry. We have black ancestry. Africa's a continent, not a country.
Right.
And so for that reason, I would say that we're all Americans. When I hear
But a lot of people don't look at it.
and I know, I
like
think
that,
that's unfortunate,
Yeah.
and I think that as time goes on, I think we're going to begin to see that. I think race is an illusion that we've created. Most people in America have European ancestry. I do, you do, most of the people, everybody on this panel does. And so to say that you're African American, no, we're just American. I would just leave it at that.
I think it's just fast. For me, I think it's great that we continue to have a conversation. It's okay to be different.
But do
and
you
it's okay
think
to
race
talk about it.
relationships as a whole, not the bio systems, but do you think that today versus 10 years ago, before Barack Obama, have race relations got better in America or worse?
Well, my personal relationships are as good or better than they've ever been, and I've had plenty of them with all
As
different
society,
cultures.
not an individual.
In society, I unfortunately feel like there's more tension that there might have been, more than I've seen since the 1960s, and I grew up through all of the civil rights. But I also know, just like we're saying about how quickly things can change, with technology especially, that this can turn very quickly in a very positive direction. So I'm very positive about it, that it's going to be people judged on the content of their character,
Martin Luther King.
not their color, just as we were speaking earlier, Preston. That's what we're striving for, and I think that the environment, like you said, Dr. Malvo, nurture is half of it, and nature is half of it. That a new environment of positivity is going to be put into place over the next year or two. And we're
Do
going
you
to see
believe because
great
of Donald
progress.
Trump's election?
I certainly do. I think that the people in this country encourage me greatly because they finally got off their couches and got up and voted.
about the
'cause
Klan?
they
I
saw
don't
the
think, I don't
direction.
think it's because of Donald Trump's
Yeah,
election.
Donald-
I think it's
no.
going to get better, maybe, but it's going to be because we're having an active dialogue, an active conversation
People are
about it.
re-engaging.
But I don't know that it's going to be because of Donald Trump
Do you think
or
that
any
no?
president.
Stick to what you think. I mean, this is what
This
the
is
panel is
right,
about. I'm
sure.
saying,
Yeah.
and Carl, you said, do
Well,
you think he has something to do with it?
I think that he is a businessman and he cares about results. And so he won't say, well, we can't, we need to study. He'll take actions. If we fail, it's okay. At least we did something. We learned from it, then move forward. So it isn't Donald
See, I'm
Trump.
glad we have a businessman.
Yeah,
in
as
the
much
White
as
House.
it's just
I know
the
you're an attorney,
environment.
so but
I'm all in favor of business. I'm
Yeah.
a big proponent
and
of
at
it.
the,
I
at the
just
end of the
don't-
day, it's about business, and this
Well, it's
country has not been run as a business.
It's about
right?
Exactly.
business and government.
We have doubled the national debt in 8 years. This presidency, this era, this 8-year era, has spent more money than all the other presidents combined. When he took over, it was still too high from George Bush, and then we doubled it.
Yeah, I want us to
It was
be careful
$20
though when we
trillion
talk about those
when- at the
statistics.
end of
So
this year.
This
It
country
was 10.
was a wreck 8 years ago.
There were a lot of
So, from
problems
an
8 years
economic
ago.
Yeah, but-
standpoint. So we made a lot of
And it's still a wreck
advancements. And I
today.
won't
It's a
dump
bigger
on-
wreck.
on Barack
Financially,
Obama
the debt,
because
I mean.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that.
It's going to be almost 21 trillion when he gets out. It was 10 when he took over.
I would say
we had
that-
major corporations failing left and right. We had the bank crisis. We had General Motors failing. We had all of
Who
those
did
things
the loans
happening.
that caused the bank crisis? Who did the loans with the stated income loans?
Remember that occurred when
Under Bill Clinton.
when Barack Obama came into office. So
With the end result, but it didn't just happen. It happened from mortgages going default from 10 years before, 5, 10 years ago with the stated income loans started by the Democratic Party under
well-
Bill Clinton. Just like what do you think of the Violence Defense Act? Do I have time for one more question? The 3 strikes you're out rule by Bill Clinton.
Well,
When
it-
Hillary
I think
Clinton
our-
called
I think
black
our-
people
I think our criminal
super
justice
predators,
system
right?
is terrible.
Well,
I
criminal
think we need to
justice reform
it
is
greatly.
definitely needed, and I do think that that's part of the way we broke homes. And all I meant by the biosystems comment was people are people. That's all I mean. We're just people. And we shouldn't divide along race. Instead, we should just come together.
We should, but do
and
we?
just be. We
But do
don't.
we today?
Unfortunately, we're not. I don't blame Donald Trump for that, and I don't blame Donald Trump that because of his demographic, because of the fact that he's a white male who has blonde hair or brown hair, depending on what color it is, if he dyes
Today,
it.
right?
But just
Today.
because he
Or if
is
it's
who he
real,
is,
right?
we have to understand that people like the Ku Klux Klan, people like the alt-right that are racist, would take him because who else could they take? They
Well,
couldn't
Black
take
Lives
Hillary
Matter
Clinton.
took Hillary.
Exactly. And so because of his demographic, we shouldn't victimize him and we shouldn't look down on him just
Shouldn't we
because
give
that-
everybody a
we should
chance? At the
give
end
him
of
a
the day,
chance.
should every president have a
your
chance?
youth panel
Yeah, give him
said
a
it right.
chance.
Give
Right.
everybody a fair
That's
chance.
right.
He's our new
Yes.
president.
Right.
Let's support our president.
That's why I'm encouraged.
until-
I think we got
until
time
things
for
go
30
wrong.
seconds.
I'm encouraged by Donald Trump.
I am too about the business side. I think he is going to bring business back, as Bill Clinton sent it away with NAFTA. As the violent, I have a cousin been in jail. You heard me say this on the youth panel for 20 years, selling marijuana 3 times. Three strikes you're out rule. Without a gun. 70% of people in prison are nonviolent drug offenders.
You're never going to get me to say that our criminal justice system is good. I think it's bad. It needs to be tweaked greatly. I hope that
Right.
it happens under this administration, whoever the president
Right.
is, and that Congress gets on that right
Okay,
away.
yeah,
And so,
we're going to have to
and our
start wrapping
government.
it up, and I think, as I said, we're going to be doing some more of these, and hopefully maybe I'll take a couple of shows and just do the youth, and then us older generation people here. Thanks very much for Dianne Andrews in Black and White.